Hi, everyone, and welcome to episode 22 of the Alder Hour. We're back in our home studios slash offices slash houses this week after being all live at Unleash, which was great fun. I'm Matt Alder. I host the Recruiting Future podcast, and also I host the Alder Hour. Excuse me, my voice is going already. This show is part of the Purple Acorn Network. If you want to find out more about Purple Acorn and the brilliant other shows they have, head over to purpleacornnetwork.com at the end of the show, not right now. You can also follow them on LinkedIn, which is a great way of connecting with all of the shows. All the shows are broadcast on the on that LinkedIn company page, so it's a great place to follow. All the episodes are also released as podcasts, so you can listen to them wherever you get your podcasts. And we are very much live. So if you're watching live, then please feel to join in the conversation. Stick some comments in the comments, and we will try and read them out as we go through. And we've got some really interesting topics that we're talking about tonight. So your thoughts and feedback would be very welcome and much appreciated. So, without further ado, let me welcome my amazing co-hosts to the show. And there we are. And we're all here. Rona, Jocelyn, welcome back from Unleash. And how's it going? Rona, how are you? Did you have fun at Unleash? You were kind of locked in a room for most of it.
Yes, I'm doing great. I had fun, but yes, I was far away. I had FOMO because people kept talking about things, and I'm like, well, I'm here in the boardroom. But yeah, it was fun. It was amazing.
Yeah, and you were doing some great interviews for the podcast, weren't you? We didn't lock you in a room. You were actually doing something.
Yeah, I was actually working. I was doing quite a few interviews for the podcast, and we were there in a separate room, which was nice because it's a lot better for me to have the interviews without all of the like hustle and bustle that's going on the floor. So I was able to focus and not be distracted by whoever was walking around.
And speaking of that, Justin, we hosted the show last week with a massive party going on just off to our right. How did you enjoy your time at Unleash?
It was really fun. I always love going to that show. Great networking there, and we talked all about the tips and tricks while we were doing our show last week, I guess, Matt. But as always, it was so great seeing the two of you in real life, and had a great time. Met some amazing people, hung out with incredible friends. So all in all, great.
Yeah, no, it was great. It was great to catch up with people. I met some new people. Yeah, it was a fabulous time. So back to this week. What do you have for us this week, Rona?
I am talking about headshots at conferences.
Wow, headshots at conferences. That's cool. And Jocelyn?
I'm talking about a poor interview candidate who was bullied and mistreated by a hiring manager.
Yeah, not the first time that's happened. I'm sure.
Yeah,
absolutely. Well, looking forward to hearing both of those things in more detail. But let's get into the show, and we start as ever with points and pints. Okay, so last week we were drinking Prosecco, courtesy of the party going on to our right. This week I'm very much back. Where's my camera? There we are. I'm very much back on the alcohol-free beer, and I think it's the one that I had from a few weeks before because I'm still working through the case, and it's really nice, and I just want to drink it and not waste it. Who else? Rona, what have you got? What are you drinking?
So I'm still working through the case of this Hyo non-alcoholic nootropic drink. I'm trying the watermelon lime one today.
It's almost as if we only drink these non-alcoholic drinks once a week, getting through them. Justin, you have something as well.
Yes, I do. I have a very basic but very reliable Modelo with me.
Ah, nice. There we are. So cool. Well, let me just taste this for... it's still as good as it was the other week. So thoroughly recommend. This is the Brooklyn Brewery Special Effects Hoppy Lager. So one of my favorites. So points and pints. And our first article is actually a review of Unleash that HireView did. And I suppose focusing a bit more on the content now, rather than the drinking and everything else that we did around the outside. I thought this is quite a nice. This sums it up really. I think it's quite a nice review. It sort of sums up some of the key points, the things that they picked out. They start off by talking about DEI and obviously the situation at the moment, but also really focusing on the fact that lots of companies are using skills and not past experience to try and get different types of talent into their organization, better representation, all of those kind of things. And there was a kind of a real sense in this review that they'd obviously been to a lot of sessions where this was being talked about in terms of, tying these kind of best talent practices in, which would drive DE&I. I got the bit about diversity and I got the recruitment bit. Didn't hear very much about the inclusion bit in all of that. So, my thought is, well, why are these people going to stay if we're losing our focus on that? So that was the first point. The second point, which is something that I think on the show last week, I said I was looking forward to going to lots and lots of sessions, Unleash. I didn't manage to do that. I went to very few because I was doing some interviewing and had meetings and all that sort of stuff. However, I did go to a couple where this next topic was a key thing, which was all about the kind of the merging of talent acquisition and talent management, at least sort of conceptually, and kind of heard this from a few angles, sort of several times. It's something that I've been talking about for a couple of years, and it's just so because we've got to think so strategically about talent now, and the crossover between learning and development, internal mobility, and external hiring, a really kind of one strategy. It doesn't really make sense to have all of these kind of silos, particularly on the talent side of HR. There's obviously other things that HR do, which makes sense to kind of stand alone, as it were. But certainly with talent acquisition and talent management and learning and development, a real sense of those coming together. And I was hearing that from some of the CHROs who were talking. So that was good to hear. And then the final bit they pick out is the obviously AI, which was a big topic. Me and Justin, we said last week that we were looking forward to kind of more strategic conversation about it, which there was. Where I think perhaps the content sort of fell down, as I said, I didn't see a huge amount of it, but from what I've heard was a real kind of emphasis on the human aspect of AI and the strategy and how it fits in with HR, but not much on the kind of the reality of it taking jobs and disrupting everything and everything never being the same again. So not the kind of the sort of the cutting edge radical content that perhaps I would have liked to have heard, with the exception of, I think on day one there was a closing kind of keynote from an MIT professor, and everyone I know who went to that was absolutely terrified by the end of it. So I don't know, did anyone see that? Did anyone see that particular keynote? No, hopefully there'll be a video of it somewhere. But I spoke to a couple of people and they were like, "We're running for the hills and hoarding weapons or something." So I was like, I don't know what he said. What did you think, Justin? What did you think of the content in particular?
Yeah, I, like you, had all these plans to go to different sessions, and because of meetings, didn't make very much of them. But there were a couple that were really important to me. One was HR trends, HR tech trends, that we talked about on the show last week a little bit. And I thought it was a really compelling session that touched a lot on the humanity behind the workforce that previously I hadn't heard as much about because people were so excited about AI. But I felt like in this conference, as you'd stated, there was more of a focus around the humanity behind the workforce, right? So I really appreciated that quite a bit. I do agree with you that there was less of a focus around, now what does this mean for our workforce, from like an actual can we keep them on the payroll type situation.
Yeah.
I wish there had been more of that. I also think that when we talk about, because there was a lot around learning and development and talent management, not as much of a focus. And again, I didn't go to very many, but same as you, just kind of as I heard, not as much of a focus on how to upskill your workforce to prepare for how AI might take over a job, and, in turn, what you can do instead. So rather than losing your job, perhaps yours just morphs into something a little different or maybe very different. And I didn't hear about that as much, and personally would have liked to more.
Yeah, I think that was the thing. I think it was something that wasn't. I mean, maybe there was a whole session on it that we missed, but I didn't really get the sense of it kind of flowing through. Rona, I don't know whether you actually got to see any of the content, but you obviously spoke to people who were watching stuff. Did you? What was your kind of impression of it?
Yeah, I did not get to go to any of the sessions, unfortunately, but I got to speak with a lot of speakers and people who had been at the sessions. I think my main thing was I was excited to hear actual conversations of skills-based hiring that are like tangible and like, how do we do this? More of like in the past, I think other conferences, it's been more like hypothetical. Yeah, we all want this, but it's like, how do you get to do it? So that's what I got from speakers, that they were talking about like practical ways of doing it, because I think it's time to shift the conversation from hypothetical to like, let's get stuff done. And then with AI, people were also mentioning that yes, there was a focus and talk about AI, but they had more like tangible, like, okay, I'm going to leave, this is what I'm going to do type of thing. That's what I heard from people.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that was that kind of summed it up quite well. So I think overall, from what I saw, some really great things, some great points in this article as well. But everyone can always do better. They need to maybe rerun the conference so we can go again and just go to the content and not do the other stuff. They need to
I
run it
know.
2 weeks in a row. That's probably the best idea. Although they did video some of it, so hopefully we'll get to see some of those videos. Okay, on to the next one, which is all about burnout. This particular article is from Kit, which is an email marketing tool for creators, and it's about creative burnout. And just kind of reading this, I think we can take things that apply to burnout, to burnout in general. And I think that burnout is just such a big thing, and it's great to see it being talked about more and more. But then you don't get it. It's not talked about at events like we went to last week. It's still not a kind of a strategic thing for companies necessarily. And I just think back through my career, and what's changed. And without wanting to sound very old, when I started, you kind of went to work and you left work on a Friday. And you couldn't really think about work at the weekend because you didn't have email. There were no mobile phones. There was actually no way of interfacing with your work outside of the office, which meant you could just literally turn your brain off work for the whole kind of weekend and get some rest and all that sort of stuff. And now, we live in this sort of 24/7, just complete exposure to what we do as a job. And I just think that's a big contributor to burnout. There's just kind of no escape. And I kind of thought back to this article is obviously talking about creative burnout, and having suffered from creative burnout before, I was just thinking about where some of the parallels were. So ironically, the reason I started my podcast was creative burnout, because I used to be a blogger and I just completely burnt out trying to write articles, and I just couldn't do it, and it was really stressing me out. And it's interesting because I started podcasting, which is actually more work than anything else, and I've been doing that for 10 years. And I think that there's probably a couple of things here. I think the first thing is I was working in a format that was much more enjoyable for me than writing kind of very structured things. And it just, that kind of gave me more of an element of control, that I think. And I think one of the issues with creators is very often we're kind of setting our own deadlines, and we're beating ourselves up over deadlines and I think this happens any job, in deadlines and things that we've agreed, and actually they're not that important, and we can shift them, and we're just kind of getting trapped in our own head. So I think that's kind of part of it. And I think the other specific thing with creators is being a slave to the algorithm, in terms of having to produce content in a certain way, because that's what the algorithm wants. But I suppose in other jobs, you're being forced to work in a certain way because that's what your company wants. So it's that kind of that lack of control, and that lack of ownership, and focusing on things that you might not really, really enjoy, and the inability to turn off. They were the things that kind of really struck me about, what causes burnout. Jocelyn, what's your view on this from a burnout perspective?
From a burnout perspective, it makes me think of COVID, right? Because everybody was burned out during COVID for one reason or another, either because you're going on site and it's very stressful, or because you're working and there's now no delineation between work and home. There's no commute that kind of separates you from that. But if I'm going to contribute anything to this podcast today, Matt, it's going to be more of a focus on burnout for HR professionals.
Yeah, cool.
Everybody is so focused on employees, as they should be, but the people taking care of, who's taking care of them, right? If HR is taking care of the employees, who's taking care of HR? And I think there needs to be more of an emphasis on that. If there are any creators listening, on that as content, and how that can be really addressed. And hopefully there's some good solutions that come out of a conversation like that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, because you just see what HR professionals are exposed to, I think we had a conversation about this a few weeks ago, in terms of the knowledge that they have, and what's the secrets they have to keep, and the effect on people's lives and the pressure of it. So I think that's a stunning point, and it's something that isn't talked about enough. Rhoda, what's your thoughts on this?
I was excited to see this article. I come from it, so I just rebranded my personal podcast. It's called Workfluencer. So I talk to HR and TA professionals who are also creators, whether they do it full time or part time. So that merge, especially the people who are working full time in TA, HR, plus creating content, the burnout is real, because they get the creative burnout that this article was talking about. And then, like Jocelyn mentioned, we have the weight of the world on our shoulders with everything, and we're worrying about everyone else except for us. So that I think I'm excited, because I'm going to have more conversations about this in coming weeks on my podcast with people who are like, how do you handle it? The creative burnout that you get, plus the work burnout. And it, like you guys said, it has a lot to do with the whole, there's no delineation between our work. And then if you work full time, you're already working from home, there's no commute, there's no separation, everything you mentioned. Then on top of that, after work, you create content that benefits you and your company. Now you're getting everything about the algorithm, and just all the things that come with being a creator. So it's a thing, it's an issue, and I'm glad we're talking about it more. I loved how this article focused on don't hesitate to take breaks, because I think for me, that's really what has helped me, because you have all of these pressures in your mind, but like, don't take a break from work and then do what I do and what most people do and just focus on creating.
Mhm.
Or take a break from creating and focus on work. Like, take a break from everything. And that's how you can like address the burnout or like deal with it, I think.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think the thing about lots of people are creators now. People who are recruiters trying to get attention on LinkedIn. That's kind of creation. And in some ways, AI makes it easier. In other ways, AI makes it much more difficult, because everyone has these tools. So the volumes of content and go up, and the making it more difficult to stand out, and all those kind of things. And the LinkedIn algorithm gets harsher every day in
Every
terms of
second.
actually getting visibility on this sort of stuff. So yeah, interesting article, and huge parallels with burnout in other sectors, and really important point about burnout in HR. So quite the situation. Let's move on to the situation room. Hey, Justin, what do you have from the crazy world of Reddit?
Yes. Poor guy, I feel really bad for him. He went to a job interview. He took public transportation to get there. And apparently, while he was walking from, the bus to the office, this hiring manager had seen him come in. And when he came in for the interview, the hiring manager started kind of going after him, saying, I don't really like hiring people who take public transportation because they never get here on time and it's not as reliable. And so I really don't like that you don't have a car. My first question when I was reading this was, is a car required for the job? Which I don't think it is. And then he kind of got more personal and started criticizing him on the fact that he had red hair, and that he felt like it was unprofessional for someone to have red hair. Just
Wow. Wow.
so odd, so
Yeah.
odd. So this, and then, the interview ends, and the guy kind of says, the hiring manager says, "Oh, we have a lot of applicants, so you probably aren't going to hear from us again."
Nice.
So this guy took to Reddit and said, "Hey, what do you think about this situation?" And a lot of people said, "Oh, you should file a claim with the EEOC. You should post on Glassdoor." There are a lot of ways that candidates can try and get the word out to other candidates if they've been unfairly treated in something like an interview. And Glassdoor is a perfect venue for that. It's interesting because there are hair color isn't a protected class, but there are some states that have now encompassed hair or hairstyles
Oh, interesting.
into protected class. I can't remember if any of them are on the color of the hair or if it's just on the style of the hair. I think it was more to kind of protect African Americans who might have their hair braided, for example, so that nobody could discriminate against them for that. So Texas came out with that. California did, a few others. Don't know if that's relevant to his situation, but just unfortunate all around, and always so sad when somebody who should be a mature hiring manager is doing something like this.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's kind of, again, it's one of these, ridiculous examples because, from a public transport perspective, it's most of the major cities in the world. I mean, certainly in Europe. If you drive to them, there's nowhere to park. So getting public transport is kind of a necessary thing. But again, I think to me, it kind of identifies that very often there are just these series, all these beliefs in recruitment that something is important or something signifies something else or something should disqualify someone from a job. And I was sort of coming up with a list. So things like gaps on your CV, going to the wrong university, having a bad handshake, not looking people in the eye, having tattoos. They're all as ridiculous as this in their own in their own ways. And I think they sort of illustrate one of the big issues with recruiting people is just this sort of this all these kind of cultural norms, all these things that the people think are how you recruit and how you make decisions. And very often they're shaped by their own experience of being recruited, which might have been a very long time ago. And they're never challenged, they're never kind of corrected. And it just kind of leads to situations like this, which are just ridiculous and kind of a waste of everyone's time. And this person could have been a great candidate. And as for the hair color thing, I can't. I don't know. I mean, it just sounds like this guy didn't want to didn't think this person was right for the job. But it's kind of a big problem, and I know that lots of TA departments do kind of great work trying to sort of put these things right. But I think it is a big issue with recruitment, and I think it's because people always reflect back to how they were recruited, and sometimes take that as that's the way that you normally do things. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, when I read through this, one of the first things that I thought of is, and it would come naturally, owning a compliance software company, the importance of training your hiring managers and your interviewers on employment and labor law practices when you are interviewing. It's so hard, and Matt, you and I have talked about this before. I used to work for a UK-based company, and so it was really interesting as we were working together as an HR team on how different the UK and the US were between each other. But in particular, because we have so many states and so many cities and so many counties that have their own laws, it's overwhelming for a
Yeah.
hiring manager or an interviewer, or even a recruiter for that matter, to know that in, this specific city, you're not allowed to ask this question is really tough. This guy sounds like he was just being a jerk, and you're right. He probably just felt like the guy wasn't the right fit and came up with some really lame excuse for why he wasn't going to hire him, which in that tactfulness deserves training in itself. But
Mm, mm,
had he said something different, had he said, we have too many white people on our team, no, like just the wrong thing, right? That company and that individual, even as an individual, could have gotten into a lot of trouble. Uh,
mm.
and so the training aspect to me, Matt, is something that I thought of right away.
Yeah, 100%. I think, and it's just this. It's sad that this doesn't surprise me that these conversations are still kind of happening every day. Let's hope that it improves over time. Justin, thank you very much for joining me for this one.
Thank you.
Okay, so it's time for our interview. And this week, we're going to do something a little bit different. So rather than have a guest live in the studio, guest live on the internet, whatever way it is, we're going to go to one of the interviews that I recorded at Unleash last week. Really interesting conversation. It's with Anna Tavis, who is the Department Chair for Human Capital Management Programs at New York University. And we recorded this on the People Insight stand. And we talked about AI, we talked about work, the crazy speed of AI progress, and a lot about education and the need for flexible thinking. So short interview, covers lots of different areas. Hope you enjoy it. We're at least we're at the People Insight by Higher Road stand, and I'm talking with Anna. Anna, really nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Could you just introduce yourself and tell everyone who's watching what you do?
I'm Anna Tavis. I am the Department Chair for Human Capital Management Programs at New York University. And this is a very hot area right now where we are trying to solve for what are we going to do next?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a very disruptive time in this space at the moment, isn't it? I mean, I mean, AI is the kind of the obvious thing that's going on. What other disrupting factors are kind of out there at the moment?
If you think of education, especially professional education, we're supposed to be upstream from all the transformation that's going on in the workplace.
Yeah.
And we're at the same point in history where the companies are who are looking to us to actually bring that next generation talent to work for them. And we feel a lot of pressure to be ahead of the curve on these issues.
Absolutely. And what brings you to Unleash? What are you hoping to get out of being here?
A whole number of opportunities. Obviously, given what I do, I learn from the needs of the business, the companies who are here, CHROs who are plentiful in attendance, and just having conversations in the community that is very much focused on these issues. It helps me then go back and design the right curriculum, attract the right people, have the right conversations with my students just in time in the workplace, in the classroom.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've got a panel tomorrow, I think it is. Tell us about that.
I have a panel coming up, and speaking on the same issue about transformation of the workforce, leadership, management. And I think what will be really interesting about the panel is that I will be on the same stage as Microsoft, my colleagues from Microsoft and SAP. So two leading companies that are basically dominating the market from the point of view of servicing huge global organizations. And I'm there to provide my research, to provide my observations on where we are going now and what we might be, considering as an opportunity for the next steps.
Yeah, and I suppose the kind of the future horizon and the landscape has sort of changed so much in the last 5 years or so, but particularly the last sort of 2 years. What does that look like? Where are we heading? What are you sort of looking towards at the moment?
I think the most important feature of tomorrow and even today already is the acceleration of learning. Obviously, I'm biased because I'm coming from the learning side of the change, and I think we need to learn and unlearn so much faster than we did before, and that's not in our DNA. We actually we are able to accelerate learning will make or break the outcomes of this whole technology revolution we're in.
And tell us a bit more about what's the impact on education of that kind of concept, but also the kind of things that AI is doing.
Yes, I think the impact is significant. There's not enough attention paid to how we can help people learn. I actually think that we are moving into the whole new generation of learning systems, and by that I don't mean technology system, I mean human systems as well. We will be able to provide each and every learner with a personalized and trained coach and assistant and tutor. We are beginning to introduce those tools already into our educational approach, where our students are able to learn at their own pace with their own preferences, and the tutors and the feedback and the ability to practice through these AI-powered tools accelerates learning significantly.
100%. I know digital coaching is a sort of particular speciality of yours,
Yes.
isn't it? What does that look like? What are the impacts of it? How does it kind of go down? How do people feel about learning from not necessarily always learning from another human being, or in a way that we've just traditionally learned stuff?
Yeah, I think that we're still going to learn from humans, because a lot of what's being coded into AI is human knowledge at this point. Obviously, at some point we're going to get to the next stage, but at least at this point. But the humans are, educators like myself, are still in charge.
Yeah.
And my role from delivering a body of knowledge and the students replicating and taking tests, certifying that they've learned from me, we are now in the joint discovery process.
Right.
My role is to organize, design learning environments where I may come to at the same time, to the same level of knowledge as my students. But my role is to bring those resources to them, again,
Right.
organized environment, and then launch them on a discovery journey, experiential discovery challenge, where they themselves, you realize what they need to learn and how they need to learn. And that is going to be accompanied, and already is, by a self-reflective process.
Right.
That not only the teacher, they don't need to wait for me to grade their papers. They're going to get immediate feedback and start improving and iterating just in time, on their time, whereas my role is going to be, again, to provide that, the whole design and environment, and then give them the final, advice, the final assessment of what they've done. And that's how they're kind of learning to not only deliver, but also learn how they learn.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that is a very, very important component, which is very different, drastically different with what we had compared to the previous learning models.
And do you think that this kind of model of learning is actually just much closer to how humans work and think? Because it can be delivered in that kind of one-to-one basis. We're not having to rely on people sort of attending things face-to-face and learning from one person. Just the scalability, do you think that kind of makes it more, almost more natural from a human perspective?
Yeah, I think it's much more personalized, because if you think about, and scalable, and you mentioned that word, because if you think about the inequities in education, we always had those types of personalized approaches available to select few.
Right.
Tutoring system, you think of private schools, well-to-do families hiring tutors for their kids, prep courses for law school exams, et cetera, et cetera. Now, with these types of tools, they're cost-effective, and if they're built into the public, let's say, educational system, they're available to all, regardless of your, family income levels, or the zip code you live in, or what kind of school you attend. So I think that what we call in education, it really democratizes those methods of learning.
And obviously people moving from education into the workforce, there's never really been a time like it in terms of the speed of change we were talking about a bit earlier. What are the skills that people need to bring into the workforce right now, and how are they maybe changed from sort of 10 years ago?
And I think those skills are exactly the skills that we are now beginning to practice in the educational system, and that is ability to innovate, ability to search for their own information, ability to critically think about what information is presented to them, and be ready for constant change, as well as let go of the old obsolete knowledge, which is a big impediment to the change now, for example, today, because we have not emphasized those skills before.
And as you said, that is such a big thing for everyone at the moment, just unlearning what you've learned. And I suppose that the further you're into your career, the more difficult that is, because there's always a feeling that your knowledge is your kind of foundation as you move forward. Well, have you got any tips for people on how they can do that, the mindset that they need to kind of cope with this change and really think that everything they knew yesterday might not be valid tomorrow?
Yes, I think the one thing that is a huge motivator in a lot of cases is the fear of being obsolete, right?
Yeah.
And I think that that's definitely a driver, but it's not enough. I think we need to put joy in this in the process and make it an enjoyable and exciting journey for any learner, any worker who is going to be engaged and in this type of discovery-based of jobs and qualifications. Again, that is not unknown to us as a human society, because let's look at people in my role, for example, and educators and researchers. They've been always doing innovators, entrepreneurs. They are driven by that innate sense of discovery. And now we want to make it available and scalable to all, so that the competition is then more of a norm, and innovation is more of a norm than an exception.
So in the world of work that we're sort of now entering, we've got humans, we've got AI, we've got all these things going on. Obviously, lots of people at the conference, senior HR people, and it just seems to me that the combination of people and technology sits very much, or should sit very much, with HR. How much do you think the role of HR needs to change, or is going to change, to kind of better reflect the situation that we're in now?
Yeah, it's a very interesting point, and I want to again provide an professional educator component there. I think that fundamentally, because we're changing the way we're educating the future generations, and it's also going to trickle through L&D programs. It's not only happening at the university level where I am, but also in L&D, executive education, et cetera, we need to change how people learn. I personally, again, I'm biased in that sense because I see everything through the perspective of how people approach these types of challenges.
Yeah.
And the way we learn, with the way we change, the way we, the way we solve problems needs to be fundamentally rewired if we are to succeed as a human race in this change process. Otherwise, so fundamentally we need to hardwire innovation, hardwire discovery, and hardwire experimentation.
Absolutely. And a final question for you. What does the future look like? What do you think, if we had this conversation again in 5 years' time, what would we be talking about?
I'm sure we're going to be worried about something else that will come downstream from where we are now.
Yeah.
However, I think we're still going to be puzzling over the roles of humans vis-a-vis technology.
Yeah.
Because I think not only as technology is going to be replacing some of our functions, I personally have a lot of optimism around a human's ability to evolve, to change. So I think we're going to find a lot of untapped resources in who we are, how we work, how we learn, and how we live together.
Anna, thank you very much for talking to me.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Okay, thank you to Anna for that great interview. And trending or ending, Rona, hit us with what you got.
So let's talk about headshots. I saw them at Unleash, and I've seen them at quite a few other conferences. And these booths where they have like free headshots for attendees. And at first glance, I was like, okay, yeah, this is like a nice perk, right? Get your makeup touched up, strike a pose, walk away with your polished photo for LinkedIn. Plus, who doesn't like a free headshot? I know I do. But when I stepped back, like as I was preparing for this episode, I started to think like maybe this is about something much bigger. And again, I'm not speaking for the organizers of the events because I don't know what the real reasoning is behind it. But we're living in a moment where visibility matters, right? I had a guest on my podcast a few months ago say that visibility creates opportunity. And I firmly believe in that. So, like, your face, your name, your online presence can open doors for you or close them. And so, for many professionals, especially those who've been underrepresented, underestimated, or just like too busy pouring into others, being invited to like step into the frame like that, right? It's really powerful because they leave that event not only with knowledge and everything, but with a great headshot that they can use for their LinkedIn. We know how expensive professional headshots are. We also know there's a ton of bias out there, and people unfortunately judge others based on their online presence and how it looks. So if you use AI headshots, that's a problem. If you don't use the right type of headshot, it's a problem. We've seen this discussions online. So I personally love that conferences give you the opportunity to just go and get a professional headshot for free and that people can use for their growth, just like their professional growth. And yes, it's trending, and I think it's gonna stick around for a long time. What do you think, Matt?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it offers the chance to level the playing field as well. It means everyone can have a good quality picture, and I just think I agree with you. It's becoming more and more important because I think the way that we've kind of traditionally stood out in business has always been perhaps text based in the past, articles, emails, all that sort of stuff, and AI is kind of coming for text. And it's just if you wanna stand out, I think really communicating who you are as an individual is a really important part of that. So yeah, I think it's kind of important. I think my last 3 or 4 LinkedIn pictures have all been headshots from conferences. I like one so much, I kept it for way too long, and I would go to meetings and no one would recognize me because my photo was about 10 years out of date. So yeah, it's a nice bit of engagement at the conference, whether it's on someone's stand or on the conference as a whole. But I think that the differentiation in our AI world is going to be a lot about people's personalities and how they come across and how they communicate. And like it or not, I hate photos of me, but what you look like is well, not what you look like, but having a photo and things like that is an important part of it. And the kind of the work that goes into headshots as an art form in terms of how they're done to make everyone look to look fabulous is always really interesting, and it's not something that's sort of available to everyone, as you say. More and more people using AI to enhance their headshots. I don't know how I feel about that. I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, to be honest with you. Don't think I've even thought about it, but yeah, I mean that's my kind of take on it. I think that I'm kind of agreeing with you, but it would be interesting your take on the AI headshots part of it.
So I have mixed feelings, but I mean, I've been using lots of AI for headshots. Again, I've trained my own model. I've trained it on photos of me. There's complications with AI. So I trained my model with like 50 pictures of me, and I gave it one picture from 4 years ago where I was significantly um, less weight than I am right now. Only one of the 50 out of the 50 pictures was that picture, and AI loves that. I always have to
Mm.
tell it, like, "Use one where I'm fuller looking and not, like, the thinner one." So, there's still issues with AI. AI is always gonna make you look to this ideal beauty standard that exists out there that isn't real, and like you said, the last thing you want is for someone to meet you in person and be like, "Well, that's not how you look," because we all know that happens at that happens at conferences to me where it's like, I'm seeing the name, people are like, "Yeah," and it's like, "This is not how you look on your headshot," type of thing. I think AI is a good tool. You can use it to, like, smooth out imperfections, to, like, make um, your your face look like, I don't know, your makeup or whatever, things like that. I think you just have to be careful with it. Now, there's other uses for AI for headshots. For example, you go to a conference, if you put the exact headshot that they gave you, now you're gonna look like everyone else who got that free headshot at the
Yeah.
conference. But if you use AI tools, because Canva has AI in it, and you remove the background, you change the background, and you do things like that, now you're using AI for I think, a benefit for and enhancing that headshot. So it really depends on what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got one of those kind of Pocket 3 video cameras like you have, like everyone has. And I was talking to it and I was doing some editing on it, and it's got a feature where you can make your face look thinner and make yourself look beautiful. So I'm pressing all these buttons and I'm like, I look amazing. I'm like, I don't look like that in real life. Is that really the image that I want to put out there? And I think there's an interesting thing there about um, how people feel about showing what they look like, and expectations about, bringing those kind of expectations about looks and beauty into the business world is kind of what's sort of happening through the back door here. So I think that is interesting as well. And I suppose, with good quality headshots, people might feel there's less need to manipulate how their face looks and all that kind of stuff. But it's interesting because it struck me for a long time that we now live in this sort of video first, photo first world, and if you kind of come into the workplace, you're sort of used to that. But there are lots of people that there's never been a thing, and I know people feel very uncomfortable about being on video or uncomfortable about putting photos up and all that sort of stuff. So it's there's a real kind of changing of times there, which I suppose happens, just happens with the passing of time anyway. But it does cause issues for people, definitely.
Yeah. I love how you mentioned the beautification with the Osmo. I actually tested it out last week. If anyone looks at one of my videos from last week, I was wearing no makeup at all. But I just forgot to do my makeup before doing the video, and I shot this video, and when I was in editing, I'm like, "I look like I'm dead." But with the stuff, I was able to put lipstick on
Yeah,
and
yeah,
look
yeah, yeah.
presentable.
Yeah.
So it's just
Yeah, it's true. No, it can make you the best version of yourself. I've kind of fallen out with mine because I was doing some testing on it with this feature, and then right before I kind of went to sleep, and it for some reason it just posted it as a Facebook story. This test video, and then I was in a different time zone to where I am normally, so I just went to bed. I woke up the next morning with all these messages going, "Did you mean to post that?" And it was like the most engaged thing I posted on Facebook for about 3 weeks. I was just like, "Oh, typical." So yeah, it's a minefield out there with this type of technology. So another question for you on this kind of conference theme. So providing people with headshots, well established. It's a well established thing. We kind of see it at most big conferences. Always very popular. What's the next thing? What is it? Are we that people might get at conferences? Is it I don't know. Is it kind of a video introduction, or what could be the next kind of booth gimmick that we see people being offered that's actually useful to people
You're
in real life.
speaking my language, and I've pitched it to a few brands. Hopefully, one of them catches on. But yes, I want to do video introductions for people. Um, at a conference. It's easy to do. I see the vision. Hopefully one of these brands agrees to do it with me, but I think that would be super helpful because video is where we're going, but I think a lot of people they don't know how to take the first step. So my thing is help people take that first step, teach them really quick in a few seconds, give them that first video, and they're done. And then they know how to do it. And I've seen it time and time again because I do this every time I speak, every time I'm invited into a company to teach them how to do video. After one quick session, everyone's like, okay, now I know where to go and where to start. So it would be super, super valuable. And that's where I think we're going. Who knows? Maybe we'll even see some people doing some AI um, type of things like AI models for your photos or things like that at booths, things that will help people with their visibility and their presence are, I think, going to always be popular things at booths.
Or even things like understanding how you can use AI to, kind of re-optimize the text, optimize the way that you describe what you do and make that land with people better. And I know that LinkedIn, all these other tools have AI kind of built in and all those sort of things. But I think there are some really useful skills out there that people could learn about how they kind of really harness AI again to illustrate the best version of themselves. And I think that would be interesting as well. I've got a real bee in my bonnet at the moment about the lack of AI training and skill, pointing people in the right direction when it comes to skills. So maybe people should be doing that as well.
Yeah, I think that would be super cool to have, and I think really people would enjoy it, and it will bring people to your booth. Now, how do these HR tech companies translate that into or tie it into what they're selling? That's a deeper conversation, but it's 100% possible.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I've seen lots of things at conferences over the years, but I think there is now scope to do different things. Harnessing AI and all those kind of things. But long may the head shops continue because I've got to get my photos from somewhere.
Exactly. Are we turning this into ideas where the HR tech companies can now come and see, like, what should we do at booths? Let's listen to Alder Hour next.
We're here to help everyone from, non-alcoholic beer fans to tech vendors. So I'm taking this that this is definitely trending then.
Oh, 100% trending. I don't see it going away.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much for bringing that one to us. Again, I hope it's something that continues. But I hope people are listening and getting some ideas about how they can do things differently. Okay, so that brings us to the end of another show. Time flies. So make sure that you check out all the other great Purple Acorn shows. They have the HR Morning Show, My First Job, From the Desk, From X to Z, some really, really great stuff there. So have a look at the website, Purple Acorn, purpleacornnetwork.com, or go to the company LinkedIn page. You will not regret it. If you want to listen to some more of my longer form interviews, you can find Recruiting Feature wherever you get your podcasts. And also you can find this show on all of your podcast channels as well as all the other Purple Acorn shows. So the Alder Hour will be back this time next Monday. I'm already looking forward to it. This is Matt Alder, clocking out.